Welcome to the Couple to Couple League PeakDay podcast, where we talk about fertility and natural family planning for a lifetime. Today's guests are Lori and Joe Trechter. Joe and Lori were certified as a CCL teaching couple in 2001. They have 6 children and were blessed recently to be able to teach their oldest son and his wife NFP when they were preparing for marriage. Lori and Joe participate in Catholic Engaged Encounter retreats twice a year and give presentations on weekends. Lori is involved with a music program teaching children to sing for masses, and Joe is involved with a trail life troop. Lori and Joe are also involved with Cross Catholic Outreach to serve the poor. Thank you for joining me on the PeakDay podcast, Lori and Joe.
Thank you, Martha.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
Can you share how you first discovered natural family planning and maybe what surprised you most about how it impacted your marriage relationship?
Yes. We first learned about natural family planning on our Engaged Encounter weekend here in Colorado. So we had never heard of it before. And there was a teaching couple from Couple to Couple League that came on our weekend and gave an introduction to natural family planning. So that's the first time we ever heard about it.
So how has living out NFP in your marriage shaped your relationship over the years?
I think it's deepened our relationship and given us a better perspective about the church's teaching on sexuality and family life and things like that. It was something that I was never exposed to growing up. And I come from a broken family myself. So that's one of the reasons why we went on Engage Encounter weekend and started learning about natural family planning is we wanted that life insurance, if you want to stay for our marriage and to have a lasting marriage versus what I, experienced growing up.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, I think learning about NFP and God's design for marriage was really kind of the starting point for diving deeper into our Catholic faith. I mean, I grew up as a cradle Catholic and we always went to church. That's always what we did. I was, active in my faith in college, but didn't really get to, the nuts and bolts of, how consistent the faith is. And when you really dive into, John Paul II's theology of the body, which is, really the foundation for, natural family planning, then it just makes sense in a way when you're like, wow, this goes deep and it all makes sense kind of at every level.
Yeah.
That was really inspiring, just I think within our relationship that we were able to grow closer just as we delved deeper into, God's design for us as men and women and husband and woman.
So a lot of couples that I talk to, like the main theme that the common denominator, I should say, is they say it really deepens their communication. Have you experienced that in your marriage as well?
Yes, I would definitely say so. Just those monthly conversations when you're, in the fertile stage of should we have more children and why or why not? What are our fears? Like when we were engaged, we kind of tell this story about how when we were asked how many children we want, my first response was 0 and then maybe 2. Now we have 6 children. And a lot of that was just, how the faith grew on me, how our relationship developed. And just some of those deep conversations we had during some of those times of, should we have another child right now? And why or why not? What are our fears? What are our dreams and goals?
Sure.
Yeah, and I think that's really, the fundamental question that I think NFP encourages couples to entertain, which is counterculture, is do we have a serious reason not to have another child? And just the presupposition that, well, yes, we are going to have another child is kind of like that's a radical thing because, society says, oh, well, can you afford another child? And, are you really going to do that? And, sometimes we share with the couples that we've mentored over time that, like Lori said, her faith journey going from, hey, I don't want any children to, well, maybe 2 is okay, and then 6. We tell the couples like, well, that's because NFP works.
Yeah.
It's not because it didn't work. None of these were
Right.
oops. It was a growth in faith and a trust in God that said,
Oh.
God, you're really better at navigating our family than we are. We'll just try and submit as best we can to your will.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. So when you teach engaged couples, what is the most important thing that you hope they walk away with, understanding about like their shared fertility?
I think just the mutual respect that they have, and mutual responsibility for their family planning, and including God and prayer and all of that is what I try to hone in on when I talk to young couples.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm always inspired that, it's an opportunity for us that, we're just a further down the road than they are in terms of married life, that,
Yeah.
we're able to share with them how important their marriage is. A sacramental marriage in our world today is just a bright light. And so encouraging them to use, NFP as as a means to communicate better, to really understand God's call for their marriage, that their marriage is important in the world, and how they live their
Mm-hmm.
life as a married couple and witness to Christ's love, is a great honor. It's a great privilege, and it's really a wonderful journey, just to give them that encouragement that society just beats down on marriage
Yeah.
and just,
Yeah.
creates a huge headwind.
So, like you, Lori, you had a little bit of a change of heart with,
Right.
having children. Have you seen that kind of thing kind of maybe begin or actually happen with some of the couples that you've taught? Like they maybe have either a total change of mind or maybe a beginning of an openness to, um, you know, different thoughts about family size. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know if I can think of like a particular couple, but what I have
Mhm.
seen is just the faith with couples as they are approaching their wedding day and honeymoon,
Uh,
and the
yeah.
question and challenge of should we be open to life at this point in our lives,
Sure. Yeah.
and just like a couple of couples stick out of my mind on how they conceived and had honeymoon babies, and maybe they weren't
Oh.
feeling like they were ready for that, but now they're
Uh-huh.
having some health challenges after, having
Mhm.
that first child. And what a blessing that they were gifted with that child at this point, because who knows what
Mm.
is going to happen going forward in the future.
Oh,
We've been edified a bit, just the couples that we'll talk to on a weekend, we'll see them around town sometimes, and they'll come back, days, weeks, months after the fact, and just, hey, we really appreciated, that perspective of, God at work in our marriage, and what is, God's plan for,
yeah.
our marriage, for our family. And they just, they'll come back to that they were really, inspired by it's really John Paul II's teaching that comes out through all of that. But just,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
It speaks to them, doesn't
it
it?
made sense.
Yeah.
And,
Mhm.
they were really gratified and inspired by that.
Aren't you kind of surprised that it's like for most couples, that's the first time, like yourselves even, it's the first time they've ever heard of natural family planning, that there is an alternative to, artificial contraceptives. And there's a whole new world out there just waiting for them to discover and explore.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and even
Yeah,
if they've heard of NFP, they probably don't know much about it. And then when they
sure.
kind of like, wow, this really works, in communion with, in cooperation with God's plan,
Right.
for us as married couples, are like, whoa, it's not
Yeah.
just this drudgery, rhythm method kind of
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
science fiction. It's like real, and it's meaningful.
Right. Right. And effective. And it really works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you encourage those young men, those young fiancés to, even if they're feeling maybe nervous or unsure about using natural family planning?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when, when we would teach, classes that would have, 6, 8, 10, 12 folks in there, or couples, the guys, I can kind of see them and like, oh yeah, guys are just full of bravado. I'll die for my wife. I'll just, well, can you abstain for a week?
Uh,
And then
yeah.
they're all, well, kind of, well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. And so,
Mm-hmm.
just challenging them. I think, men
Yeah,
relate to a challenge that,
they do.
they want to step forward and be a leader. They want to be courageous. They want to
Right.
lead.
Oh, yeah.
And this is just a way that I can help emphasize, that with them. And that it is important, and we do have a role to play. It's not just our
Mm-hmm.
gratification or our needs that need to be met, and we need to place our wives' needs ahead of our own, and really
Mm-hmm.
encourage them in that area of self mastery. That
Right.
we're not called to do anything and do everything when we want, how we want.
Mm-hmm.
That God has an order of things in our lives, and as men, that we can
Right.
help share that, and we can form that in our families and in our marriages. And I found that to be super helpful as our kids have gotten older,
Yeah.
that when I talk to them, and I take that very seriously, and I've talked to each of our kids, the boys and the girls, to introduce the theology of the body and God's design, God's plan for us as
Right.
men and women and as married couples. And
Right.
so when
Right.
I broach that with them and I talk to them about this is the order of things, I can reflect that in our own marriage and say, look,
Mm-hmm.
even in,
Mm-hmm.
mom and I are married, have been married, and we still have, an order to things that God has asked us to follow. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think really having that opportunity to promulgate that with the guys,
Yeah.
set
Yeah.
that as a standard, has been really helpful over time.
Mhm. Yeah, you bring up a great point about, passing this along to your children just by the way you're living your life and how you have this vocabulary now that you can speak with your children and, help them understand. Did you ever imagine that taking that NFP class when you were engaged would, filter down through the years and and have this kind of impact with your family?
No, not
Yeah,
really.
I didn't
That
really think.
was,
Yeah,
yeah,
I just
that's
get
just been
chills
ser-
thinking about it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
No,
they
and I think that's really, you mentioned the word vocabulary. I mean, we bring that
mhm,
up pretty
Mm,
frequently with
yeah,
couples that we meet, especially we've met with, a few older couples that, maybe this
yeah.
is their second marriage and maybe they're past the
okay,
childbearing years, but just, the marriage prep requirements for the church have asked them to take an NFP class, and
yeah,
we'll streamline things and
Yep.
talk to them, appropriate, for their phase in
right, a
life.
little different way,
But
yeah,
I encourage them, like, this is a great vocabulary to understand,
yeah,
God's design for us as men and women, so that they can share that with their kids, with their nieces, their nephews, their grandkids,
mhm,
so that,
mhm,
they can be that light and offer that
yeah,
consistency of vocabulary,
yeah.
not just, from their parents, but from their grandparents, from, those around them.
What unique perspective, Joe, do you think men bring to the conversation? You touched on it a little bit about how you've talked with your children. Um, we teach couple to couple. That's very foundational in the way that couple to couple teaches is, we have, the couple, the husband and wife teaching other couples.
Yeah.
So why do you think that's really important?
Well, I think there's been, lots of research about, children and whether or not they stay active in their faith. And a
Mm.
lot of that traces right back to the father. And so, the mother can be super faithful. If the dad doesn't go to church, the kids are not going to go to church.
Yeah, yeah,
That kind of a thing. And that it's a very much a parallel with NFP. That
Mm,
if Lori were the only one talking about it or emphasizing it, and I'm kind of checked out, the kids are going to
yeah.
see that and say, this is just not one of those things. And so there's a certain amount of credibility or, you know, gravitas when,
yeah,
dad rolls in and says, yes, this is important, that
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just different. It's not any better or worse than, than Lori's presence or authority in the family. But,
Hmm.
when the dad says it just has a different feel. And when we both say it, that's even better. And
Right,
so,
right.
I'm part of that equation. And, I think the men have to understand they're a really important part of that
Yeah,
equation
yeah,
of witnessing, you know, NFP and that self-sacrificing love within marriage.
right. Have you seen like any particular moments where God kind of really clearly worked through your teaching ministry to bless a couple? Any specific examples you can think of?
Well, the first thought that came to mind for me was, our opportunity to teach our son Joseph and his
Um,
fiance at the time, Madeline, an NFP course. So we met with them, and it was over Zoom. They were, in different places at the time,
okay.
and but just that opportunity to witness, to them, and for us to be vulnerable and share some stories that Joseph hadn't even heard, before.
Sure.
And, you know, to give them that foundation that we know is super essential to a thriving marriage, and to help them, you know, shape that foundation. You know,
Yeah.
to me, that's really a standout, you know,
I
time
bet.
that they were willing to, you know, take the class with us,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that we were, you know, in a position that we could help and be open with them, just as we have been with, you know, scores of other couples over the
Right.
years. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because that was
Um,
one thing that I remember asking them specifically, like, "Hey, you've heard us talk, Dad and I talk about NFP, like all through your life growing up,
right.
knowing that we
Right.
teach these classes, but now, you know, as a young adult, being able to talk and share about these things, because I mean, even couples you don't know, sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk about the things we talk about in
Yeah.
NFP.
Right.
It's very personal. So,
Sure.
so
Yeah.
when it comes to sharing this with your own children, you know, sometimes our kids say, well, it's weird to talk to mom and dad about this. I'd rather talk to my friends or someone else about it. So the fact that
Mhm.
we, you know, were able to be open with one another. And I would
Right.
encourage, you know, other parents out there to, you know, be able to have these conversations with their children about
Right.
such intimate topics, because who better to share that with, you know,
Exactly.
within the family than
Yeah. Yeah.
outside the family.
Right. Right. Who loves you more than your parents, right? And what's the best thing for you in your marriage, right? Well, the way I got kind of connected up with you, Lori, you had contacted the central office here and asked about materials for a conference that you were going to be at, that you wanted to promote, natural family planning. So you guys not only teach NFP, you're also promoting it in other ways. What other like ministries or other ways that you guys are sharing natural family planning with other people? You talked about engaged encounter.
Right.
Can you
Yeah,
talk a little?
that was the primary means by which we were promoting NFP, because we would
Okay.
give twice a year. We have engaged encounter weekends here in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
would give those talks on the engaged encounter weekend to introduce couples to NFP. And
Yeah.
but yeah, there's an exciting new apostolate forming here in Colorado Springs called
Yeah.
Unity Women, which is kind
Okay.
of a spin-off of a men's group that started, I don't know how many years ago. Joe's
About eight.
involved about 8 years ago, Infernal Men. So now we have Unity Women starting up this year to bring women of all phases and ages and vocations
Okay.
together to grow in sisterhood towards sainthood is kind of our
Okay.
motto or theme.
Yeah.
So when I heard about this, I thought, well, this would be a great opportunity to have a table at the conference
Right.
to share about NFP, because we're also going to have teens at the conference too, and a track for
Yeah.
the teenage girls. And
Right.
so many times through the years, things have come up about, and even couples and women that we teach now as part of engaged couples say, well, why didn't I know about this sooner? That's
Yes.
been a long ongoing question. Why didn't I know about this
Right.
sooner?
Right.
And
Right.
so I love how CCL now has the mother-daughter programs and the young adult program coming about
Right.
now, so that
Right.
we
Very
can,
exciting.
you know,
Hmm.
share this with young ladies earlier on in stages. So
Hmm.
that's something I wanted to promote at the conference. And we now
Great.
have a doctor who is here that has started her own practice and is, you know, going to promote NFP with us. And then there's a Creighton teacher here that is going to
Right.
share, and she does mother-daughter programs as well. So the three of us are
Okay.
coming together for this Unity Women
Wonderful.
conference to share about natural family planning and fertility awareness
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
women. So
Well, good luck with that one. Yeah.
thank you.
Hopefully, it'll be a lot of people coming to the table, right?
I hope.
What advice would you give Catholic couples who are hesitant about using natural family planning, or maybe feel like it might be too difficult for them? Maybe the woman has irregular cycles, or they're experiencing, some infertility. What advice would you give them?
Well, when it comes to infertility in particular, I would say, you know, definitely seek out natural family planning. I always refer couples to local pro-life type clinics that they can go to. And then the Pope Paul VI Institute, I refer them to their website and information, or if they live near there, great. But I always try to encourage couples that, if you have health challenges, that's all the more reason to really get to learn about natural family planning and how your body works, and to seek out doctors that aren't just going to put a Band-Aid or mask your current underlying problems. I mean, I've even gone through some challenges myself, going through menopause and different things that I didn't understand was going on. But I felt that because I use natural family planning all through my lifetime, pretty much, that I had a basis to know my body, know what was going on, know when something wasn't right, and to be able to, take that and continue recording, charting, taking that data and analysis to different doctors to seek help. So
right. There's nothing like having those cycles recorded that can help a doctor really begin to pinpoint, any issues that somebody might have. Yeah.
And I, when things get hard, I always come back to Philippians, and, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And, I enjoy sharing it. It's a little bit personal, but, we've shared with couples, some of the dialogue that we had that is really important and really powerful, so that they can kind of hear what that sounds like in our marriage. And it's not just, oh, well, it increases communication. When we had just had, William, our fourth child. And actually we went from 2 kids to 4 kids because we adopted Carlos while Lori was pregnant. And so they're only 7 months apart, but they're only 2 weeks apart to our family. So we brought Carlos home, and 2 weeks later, William was born.
Wow.
And so, Lori's cycles hadn't really returned yet after William. And, Lori, her progression was 0, 2, and now we just had 4. We went from 2 to 4, which is kind of a big jump. And, we were in that postpartum infertility phase. And, we were abstaining because we weren't really quite sure. And, that was beginning to be difficult. And, and particularly, for me. And so we had a very intense conversation in terms of prayer that, what if God is calling us to have another child, and that child is going to be the next pope, or find the cure to cancer, or, do some great thing for humanity? Who are we to say no? And, I share with the couples that, we've been charting for years by that point. And we're like, we thought this was like a minuscule chance that we would, conceive, at that time in our cycles, and, how things were returning with Lori. And we offered that up together in prayer. And we said, God, this is not about our will, but your will be done. And, in our embrace, 9 months later, we had a child from that we got to name. And it was really spine tingling kind of presence that we offered up that prayer. We enjoined in that marital embrace. And then, we saw our, temperatures just kind of stay high, and we're like, wow, what kind of ride are we on? God is really holding us right now. And it's just one of those spine tingling kind of moments as a couple that's worth it. When there are struggles, that is why it's worth the struggle, because God blesses us in our marriages when we are in cooperation with his plan for our lives.
Oh, how beautiful. That is powerful. So when you look ahead, what gives you hope for the future of natural family planning and marriage prep and Catholic family life?
I think just the couples that we've been interacting with and engaged with lately that are just open to the message and open to seeking truth and seeking something better for their lives, that gives me a lot of hope on interacting with these young couples and seeing their joy and inspiration and things like that.
Yeah. And I think, in some respects, it's kind of, Pope Benedict talked about, the chaff burning away and the church getting smaller before it gets bigger. The faithfulness of the couples that we've been encountering, and that really is a hopeful thing, that they want to have a committed sacramental marriage, and they want their marriage, to be a light. And there's just so much noise in the world today with all the electronics and the social media and just digits all around us. And I think the generations coming up, they are longing, they are yearning for what is truth. And, the truth is embodied in Jesus. He is the truth. And all of this leads back to a very beautiful plan, a beautiful design that God has for us in our marriage. And I think couples are going to resonate with that, because they're going to find that it is true. It's not just, this, person's opinion, or this person's opinion, or this AI opinion, or this other thing. This is like real. And that gives me great hope. And I think those couples that, really want that challenge, they're going to have a lot of kids. And, those couples that are struggling and don't really know up from down, they're not. And so project that forward in demographics. I think that's a reason for great hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. And you guys are good witnesses of it in your own marriage. The journey that you guys have taken is, just tracks exactly with what you're hoping for other couples. So that's beautiful. Thank you so much for everything that you have done, for all the couples that you've taught and touched with your witness and your ministry, Joe and Lori. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to chat and be on the podcast. Hopefully this will be fruitful.
Oh yeah, it will, for sure.